Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 13 of Daffy's Roundtable. Now, if you know me, you know I'm pretty obsessed with dart frogs, and you know I could spend hours talking about them. So it's pretty weird that we've done 12 episodes already without mentioning them. For this reason, today's episode is going to be all about dart frogs, and I have the perfect guest to do this. My guest today has been a hobbyist for 10 years and is a highly trusted source when it comes to dart frog information, dart frog supplies, or even dart frogs themselves. Now, before we get into this, and I introduce my guest, I do want to say that while this episode will have a lot of great information about dart frogs and will be a good source of information for people in the hobby, it is not enough. Please do your own research before purchasing a dart frog or any other animal for that matter. Okay, without further ado, let me introduce my guest for today, Alex Menke from FrogDaddy. Hello.
How's it going?
Good, how are you? Thank you very much for coming on.
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited for this episode.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I have not done a dart frog episode yet, although half my collection is dart frogs and like I'm obsessed with dart frogs. So I've been waiting for this for a very long time. So thank you.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad I'm the first one.
Yeah, for sure. So let's dive right into it. First of all, how did you get into keeping dart frogs, and then how did FrogDaddy come out of that?
So I got into keeping dart frogs about 10 years ago, a little bit more. So I've been at it about a decade now. So in 2011, I actually got my first group of dart frogs from a guy. I was in college. He was actually getting rid of them, and I had just started researching dart frogs, so I jumped on it. I had been mulling around on Denderboard as a nobody for a while there, and I got them. There were two Costa Rican green and blacks, Aratus, and
Very
then
nice.
yeah, I basically went to Josh's Frogs website because I was in the back of the classroom thinking about owning them, and yeah, I think I bought like 6 more, so I had a huge group of 8, just like
Of the same of the black and greens.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Costa Rican green and blacks.
Yeah.
But I only had like a 36-inch tank, so quickly I broke it down into a trio eventually and sold the others. And that was years later though. I had 8 of them in there for probably almost a year. But
The 36, 18, like
Exoterra.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
Very cool.
36, 18, 18. That was my first ever tank besides my 1824 that was housing tree frogs at the time.
Awesome. And this was about 10 years ago now.
Yeah, that was in college. So I'm getting old, and that's fine. It's another topic. But during grad school, after I moved to Michigan, I started getting more into it. That's when I had about 13 enclosures. I had 11 in the first half, and then by the next year I had 13. Still really small. FrogDaddy was kind of a conceptual idea at that point. I guess I was like some other hobbyists where
you were breeding and selling.
Yeah, you
Right.
have everybody has that like business that's not actually a business, because they have offspring and they got to sell them.
Yeah.
So I started doing that. I started doing wholesale leaf litter with Mike Rizzo at Glassbox. I started doing a lot of stuff like that. Wholesaling leaf litter to a lot of people. I was the leaf guy.
Leaf is an important part of the hobby.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot of work for very little pay. That's why everybody wholesales them. Yeah. I figured that out like last year. Still doing it.
A couple of years later.
Yeah, a lot of years later.
But do you find that the physical products do better for the business than the actual frogs?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the frogs are a very minimal portion of my actual business.
Right.
If I was a smart businessman, I would get rid of like probably 90% of my collection.
But you're a hobbyist first.
Yeah, no, I'm a collector, man. I love Pokemon. I mean, I'm a collector. I'm a huge collector. So I collect everything I get into. I collect it. So.
Oh, that's awesome. When you see the different colors, it's kind of hard to not.
It's awesome. It's also really, it can be problematic. But yeah, so after grad school, I went back to teach at the university I got my undergrad from, at Queens. And so I was back in North Carolina. And then I went from 13 to 72 enclosures. And then the next
Very
year I
quickly.
had 132. And in between the transition from 72 to 132 is when I launched the company. And that was kind of an idea that I started getting more and more into as I expanded the collection. You know, you start selling plants and dry goods. I already did all the leaf litter, so I already had that. So yeah, I just basically started a website. I launched my website before my business in 2017 with 2 products on it, Fruit Fly Media and Springtails. And all of a sudden, you know, every month I'd add a few products. And then by the end of 2019, I had a brand new website redesigned for launch in 2020. Or 2021, I apologize. That was the wrong year. I just launched my new website this year.
Right. And that's about when I started hearing about you on the Dart Frog group on Facebook. I remember you started like when you did the reopening, you started posting, and actually that's before we dive into Dart Frogs itself. That's something that I've noticed a lot of consistency on the pages. People always complimenting your customer service and like how far you go for your customers. So do you want to maybe talk about that for a second? Do you feel like that's a big part of the FrogDaddy name as well?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the only thing I have going for me actually is that I feel like I'm not trying to be, you know, too humble about it, but I feel like a lot of the companies sell similar products. The only way we really distinguish ourselves is actually our feeders. Our fruit flies are really good. I take a lot of pride in our feeders, shipping feeders. It's a home run every time, which is really good. That's where we beat competitors mainly. And then also our customer services. I mean, Chase Jennings probably gives me a pretty good run for my money in terms of customer service.
Is that Houston Frogs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we really try to push that. But I have loyalty tiers. I'm giving all of my my top 10 customers, I'm giving them gift cards this Christmas, and any loyal customers, I'm giving gift cards this year. I really do try and give them rewards. There's all sorts of rewards programs. So yeah, the customer service is my number one priority. It always has been, and it's the only real thing that distinguishes me from other companies, I think.
Right, and that stays true to everything I've been hearing and reading about you. And you're right. I mean, Dart Frog breeders, your products are gonna be the same. The stuff. So you're right. It's the brand and whether they want to support a brand that makes somebody go to a specific place. So that's awesome that you have that. And the fruit flies. Again, I have a bunch of questions for you about fruit flies because that's something that again I kept seeing, like you're always arriving perfectly packaged. There's always like booming cultures and all of that. But we'll get into that. Let's get firstly into the frogs. Do you have a favorite species?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I want to start tough.
Yeah, that's probably the hardest question we'll encounter today.
Yeah.
Yes and no. I have many favorites. It's like trying to choose children. Sometimes people do have a favorite, but they're never going to tell you.
They're never going to tell you.
So yeah, I mean, I really like Uvb Pamilio. People have been listening in on any of my lives or have been following me for a long time. They know that we really focus on procuring obscure localities. I'm really pushing captive conservation efforts. So any locality I don't have, I usually just get it. I mean, it's crazy to think, but I do have the means to do that. So I do. A lot of the company money goes to procurement of the really rare stuff, stuff that nobody wants to breed, that kind of stuff, because eventually they will want to breed it and nobody will have it. I've seen a lot of locales die out in my 10 years, and I'm really upset about that. So Uvb Pamilio are one. We have 52 different locales at this time.
Wow.
Probably one of the most robust collections in the country at the moment. And then Ranitomeya, any of the Ranitomeya species are great. I've really scaled back on my focus on those. In regard to Uvb, I'm kind of pushing those right now. Ranitomeya have kind of been an afterthought, but when I first got in the business, I was very, very, I was very much so pushing the genus as a whole. And I would say out of the genus, the Fantastica are my favorite species.
Okay.
So those would be my two if I had to choose. And there's, there's a ton of runner-ups, but we'd be here all night if I was rattling everything off.
No, for sure. And I'm sorry for making you choose.
Yeah,
And so,
okay.
so you said your focus is primarily Ufaga because of like conservation efforts and because their habitat is kind of dying out now in the wild.
I think a lot of habitats are dying out. That's kind of a global problem in terms of habitat degradation, land use issues, the promotion and pushing agriculture in those countries. I mean, what are you going to tell somebody not to feed their family if a little frog dies? I mean, in other developing nations, as as a whole, they're looking for GDP increases in GDP. And I mean, if you have everybody just, all of it's ecotourism, it can't all be ecotourism. And especially with coronavirus and the things that have been happening nowadays, I mean, it's been even harder for those countries to sustain. So yeah, they're tearing down rainforests to build fields for agriculture. And you really can't be that mad at them, because if that's the way they have to feed their family, then that's what it is.
They have nothing else.
Yeah. So all you really can do is hope that your NGOs or wherever you're donating your money to for rainforest conservation is actually buying rainforest property and then staffing it. Because if you're just buying it and nobody's there with a gun, those countries really don't care. They pretty much, some of those countries are really rogue when it comes to enforcement of laws.
Yeah.
I won't go into that, but like, that's kind of how it is. So yeah,
no, for sure.
What I want to do, my main objective is to have at least 2 pairs of every frog that we've ever had in this industry. That's every locale, every morph, everything.
Wow.
So that in case something happens in the wild where they do go extinct, at least they have survived in captivity. Now, what does that mean? Nothing much.
Do you think there's a potential of returning them to the wild one day?
I doubt it. Okay. I don't know for sure. Even with the detailed records I keep, it's hard pressed to assume that anyone would place them back into the wild. Nor do we know if they would survive very well if reintroduced. There's also a time frame there that may or may not work. You have to work with local officials on that. Exportation of animals. I mean, would they even make it? Would they make the trip? There's a lot of factors that come with reintroduction, and a lot of those things I can't do based on who I am. Our facility is not even like AZA accredited. You have to have documentation, papers, usually to validate, genetic tests to validate that what you have is the exact species. So there's a lot of things at play with reintroduction.
For sure.
But again, I mean, what can you do?
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I'm hopeful as well, but we can only do what we can do here with captive breeding efforts. That's with any animal. So, yeah.
No, for sure. Yeah, and this is a topic that I actually discuss about many different species and the potential of it, and not just the mixing of the locales and keeping of the records. We don't even know what viruses or pathogens we can introduce back into the wild from our collections. Having different locales next to each other or different species next to each other, it could be transmitting between them, and they might do okay in captivity, but you don't know.
Yeah, we have no idea, and there's risk management in play there.
Sure.
And a lot of countries aren't going to take that risk. So, especially not from FrogDaddy, who is that? That's not like, maybe one day it'll be something.
Hopefully.
But right now it's just a company. So
no, a company doing great things for the hobby for sure.
Hopefully so. Yeah. I appreciate that.
No, definitely. Awesome. Okay, so should we get into a little bit of the dart frog husbandry?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Fire it off. Let's go. So first thing I want to ask is, there's a lot of misconception about how hard dart frogs are to keep. Are they,
Yeah.
that they're very finicky species, that they're one of the tougher things in the hobby. What's your opinion on that? Is it true? What do you think?
No, it's not true at all. They're not hard to keep at all. In my opinion, they're one of the easiest animals to keep
I agree.
if you get the setup right. And most of the time, the misconceptions are within the setups. For some reason, there's perpetuation of misinformation or just lack of, it's not even misinformation, it's just the lack of information. A lot of chain pet stores just lack the proper enclosure and the proper know-how to educate their buyers. I think that's one of the main things. Now that we're seeing increases in imports due to popularity, which is not a good thing. That's not what captive breeding is trying to do. But we are seeing it, and a lot of these frogs are still coming in, which isn't all a bad thing. I won't get into that too much or derail here, but we do see people at expos. These are importers. They have Leucomelis and things on their table. They're $30. They're super cheap, but they're wild caught.
They're wild caught.
Yeah, so a lot of wild caught frogs, man, they're chock full of just a lot of
worms
diseases.
and diseases, and
So most of the time, in the wild, they're living less than 5 years. In captivity, they can live over 20 years.
Wow.
So you have, and a lot of the reason is diseases, viruses, bacterial, fungal infections. Those things are rampant in the wild. And, in captivity, we can at least somewhat control that. But I think there's that to contend with. The lack of information. Store owners just getting import lists and being like, oh, there's dart frogs on this one. I'm going to grab those, stock them in my random pet store, and sell them to people on a
and
cocoa.
Stock 10 different species in one tank.
Yeah, and with like cocoa fiber substrate, no leaf litter, no hides, fake plants. It's honestly just a disaster because they think they're doing a decent job because other frogs can actually live on that stuff and be fine. But dart frogs, it's not that way. So that's the main thing, I think. And the other part does land on the buyer. Not doing enough research. But, I mean, the seller is always to blame. That's what I've learned. The seller should not push these animals on anybody. It shows. I always make sure that my potential buyers are, hey, do you have a tank? Do you have it set up? Or are you going to get the tank over there and come back to me and set it up at the table? I allow people to do that. Do you know about fruit flies? Do you know about culturing? Are you aware that we sell fruit flies? Are you even aware that dart frogs eat fruit flies? So it's like the feeders is another huge issue. It's a huge issue. The biggest problem is misinformation and lack of information, and then the second is feeders. People don't get the fruit fly thing, and I get it. Like it's weird. You have cultures. You have fresh versus producing. You have, what type of fly do I get? How long is it going to take? I buy this powder. Does it already have fly eggs in it? How do I make more of flies? I mean, I've gotten, what are these white worm things? I'm like, dude, those are maggots.
Yeah.
They're like, is that bad? And I'm like, dude, what? So, again, but this is foreign to people.
This is not something they see every day.
Right. And it's not. And you have to, as a seller, you have to remind yourself, baby steps, come on back. Like we don't all have research in this, degrees in this stuff. And yeah, so a lot of the times your regular pet shop owner is getting strawberry blue jeans on an import, trying to feed it crickets and just sells them faster than they can die, literally, to unsuspecting buyers thinking that they're an easy frog. When in reality, they are an easy frog, but the problem is you're setting your customers up for failure. Then the customers get on the dart frog groups and being like, I have frog. And it's like dying, of course. And so we have to back up. So I think for sellers, we have to do better. But the animal industry is really rough. I don't even want to get into it.
Sure.
Not right now, at least. If we get into it later, that's fine. Because I'm trying to finish the answer to the question.
No
trying to get better at this. And the second thing is buyers do the damn research. Like, stop buying things you know nothing about. It's an animal. even though it's a frog, it's like you literally going, and people do this too, so it's not a good example, but that's like buying a puppy on a whim. Like, are you ready for this puppy? Do you have all the things you need to feed the puppy, to house the puppy, to
Can
pay
you
for the
afford the
vet
vet
bills for
bills?
the
Yeah.
puppy? Yeah, it's just like it makes no sense to me why people go to these Repticons and things, and they will literally go up and buy an animal and they don't even have an enclosure. They're just gonna wing it. And they don't know what to feed it. And I'm just like, if I was the seller of that animal, I would be ashamed that I
Yeah.
did not educate my buyer. And that's where FrogDaddy is different. I don't even push the frogs on people. I push people away from the frogs because I want them to have a good experience. Here's why. People
Okay.
get said frog and they kill it, and then they think it's hard, and then they spread misinformation that, oh, the frog was hard. It's like we literally punish ourselves as sellers because we're not doing our jobs. We would have more buyers, repeat customers, and people spreading good information if we would just not push these animals on people. But people are looking at short-term gains, and they're not looking at the hobby as a long play to get more people involved in this, and that is a huge issue. So it goes with any industry too.
That is
And
very
nobody
true.
plays the long game, and I play the long game because I'm going to be here for a long time. I have fantastic repeat customers. I have great, it's always a good experience. And that is what keeps people in the hobby. The problem is the hobby burnout is so fast. Average turnover is less than 2 years for people
Wow.
to get dart frogs and get out of it the average time is less than 2 years. And that to me is sad because these animals live, at least 7 years, 7 to 15 years on average.
Right.
So,
And it
what,
takes at least 2 years to really understand the whole
of
process
course.
and to learn everything. Like even, I mean, I've been keeping dart frogs for maybe 3 years, and I still know nothing. Like,
Yeah, I know. And that's the fun part is like
yeah,
all the vivariums and the builds and the
of
different
course,
kinds. The whole experience can't be experienced that fast.
for sure.
Um, so I think we're really losing our ass by just pushing these frogs on people, even though they're very easy. So that's the full answer to your question. They're not hard animals at all. I couldn't have thousands and do it by myself if I had any other animal, even fish. I mean, it would be very difficult.
No, for sure. I mean, fish are all the water changes you need to
Yeah,
do and all of that. It for
crazy.
sure. It takes a lot more for sure. I can tell you that. No, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, no, that's great. And then even to add to that point, once people do go on those Facebook groups and they're posting those dead frogs, even though it's not their fault, they're getting attacked by other people in the community, and they're like, "Well,
It
is
doesn't
this a
help.
community I want to be in?" Even like for sure, it
No,
doesn't help.
and
Yeah,
that's they go. They go in and out,
in and
and
out.
it's
Yeah,
faster than you could have had. You could have changed the whole experience by getting a good seller in there, explaining the frogs, explaining why they're awesome, explaining everything that goes into the setup. Yeah, it takes a lot of time. Yeah, you may not get the sale, but it doesn't matter. It gets them good information. Then most of the time people sit and chew on that information for sometimes weeks on end. Then you get a call back and they're ready to buy. And that is when you're good. You set them up for success. And I have had people from first sale to today. It has been 3 years. And I have some customers that are 3 years going, and they have, at least I can name a guy right off the bat that has over 20 tanks. And I have a guy going on 8 tanks. I mean, these
all
are
from you.
first-time customers. And I set them up right. And a lot of people do it. Chase does that too. It's not just me. I mean, again, I'm not trying to promote myself here. I'm just saying that if you get a good, reputable, hobbyist-minded business selling you a frog and not just some conglomerate or some Repticon vendor, not to pick on them. I vend the Repticons. I see what's on the table. You get a good experience, and that keeps people involved, excited, and it keeps the hobby going and growing. So
That is an amazing answer. No, I completely agree with everything you just said there. And you know what? It occurs in many different, even in the like creating content world. Right? People are trying to push each other out, but the more people out there
yeah,
creating content, the more people view the hobby, the more people join the hobby, the more everyone benefits. So I absolutely agree with you. Yeah. Okay. So what about the setups themselves? You know, there's a lot of rules out there. Yeah, a pair to 40 gallons, a trio to an 18, whatever. There's a lot of like set rules. Do we agree that these rules are like need to be there, or is there like space to maybe move around?
Always space to move
What do
around.
you- Okay.
100%. The rules are there for a reason, though. I do respect the rules, and I like the rules, and we set those rules. Not
sure.
me, but we as a hobby.
Yeah.
The reason that we set those rules is because beginners want to smash these frogs into small enclosures. That is not inherently a huge issue on the short term. The problem is people have fishbowl mentality. That's what I like to call it. A lot of individuals have this old school mentality that small frog equals small enclosure. The smaller the animal, the smaller space it needs. And we know that that's not true. We as in the hobby, we know that that's not the case, that there are some frogs that are really territorial. There are some frogs that use vast amounts of space in situ. So in their native environment,
right.
They have territorial disputes. They need complex design for proper mating rituals, for calling, for competition, if they're in groups. But there are two things that I like to talk about that have to do with space inside of a set environment. So let's just say we have 2 frogs in a 10-gallon tank. Most people nowadays would say that's way too small. That's never going to work. Don't do it. And for new people, that is absolutely true, because new people do not need to be trying with bare minimum. If this is this is an ethics thing. I go a lot by ethics. Ethically speaking, why would you want to do the bare minimum for your one frog or your one pair of frogs? Why would you not do a little extra or a little bit like normal and just get an 1824 or something like that? As a new person coming in, it's going to set you up for a lot better success. There's more space for the frogs to, jump around, to hunt, to mate, do whatever they need to do. Putting them in a 10-gallon is not great. Now, if you did put them in a 10-gallon, I have tons of 10 gallons. I have 72 of them. And they're all going away this year. So, which is good.
You don't like the look of the 10 gallons, huh?
I hate 10 gallons. They're not great tanks for frogs.
I'm the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're doable. Yes. Have I had pairs in there for years? Yes. Am I proud of that? No. But I also have almost 300 enclosures.
Right. It becomes tough.
Yeah. I mean, you have to understand that, like, I'm not a puppy mill, but I'm also not like, here's my one frog. Yeah, I have a 10-gallon. It's like, there's no excuse for that, in my opinion.
Definitely.
Do better, but at the same time, that's hypocritical. So I understand. So things you can do that aren't talked about are usable surface area. And, oh my gosh, what's my other one? I'm blanking right now. Basically like visual barriers. Yeah. And that goes with habitat complexity. So, you know how like in New York City, there's no space, right? But there's a crap ton of people there. And again, you probably won't like New York City, or maybe you do. If you're like me, you hate it because there's way too many people. I don't like that. Well, the reason so many people can fit in New York City is because skyscrapers and, we build vertically.
The way it's designed.
Yeah. So what you can do in a tank is also build vertically using the same methodology. So you can take cork tubes, hollow tubes, those kinds of things, and stack them. This allows for frogs to have a complete visual barrier and a hide on top of one another. And you may think, oh, that's taking up a ton of space, but it's actually giving you more space.
More usable surface, as you said earlier.
More usable surface area, correct. Yeah. So if you use this method, you can actually successfully keep frogs in a smaller enclosure with more of that. I don't want to tout that, though, because that's not great for new people to hear, because then they're going to try and get away with that. And I really
for sure
think you should. That's something more that's more advanced, that needs more attention. The other thing is visual barriers. Dart frogs get really stressed out. Stress is like a main component of them dying. And stress can be caused by many different things. A lot of new people get tinctorius, and tinctorius are aggressive dart frogs. All dendrobates are aggressive to some degree. Even my Eratus used to wrestle all the time. They still do. I have a 1.2, so the two females kind of do a tussle. But it's not bad. It's not like dendrobates, tinctorius is. But if you have that and you don't have any visual barriers, if it's just an open tank, they always see each other and they're always competing. There's nowhere to go, to retreat. So making a complex environment is sometimes better, even at the cost of tank space. So habitat complexity does, at least with the hardscape, what I call the hardscape versus the softscape. The softscape is the plants, the microfauna, and the frogs, whereas the hardscape is the substrate, the leaf litter, and the background, wood pieces, that kind of stuff. So building complexity and usable surface area in your hardscape is going to promote a little bit better first-time success. And so that's what I tell people to do. You know, buy the wood pieces, buy the cork rounds. Cork rounds are fantastic. Honestly, I use them in every build that I have now. Hollow out cork rounds. Yeah, you won't see your frogs all the time, but that's good because
they're comfortable.
And they need to hide sometimes. You can't have your frogs out. They're not like that in nature. They hide under leaf litter like most of the day. I mean, they would just be open. Like it, you got to understand an 1818 cube that has a giant ass light at the top and no cover. That's like a field to them. They don't live in that area.
Yeah.
That's totally artificial. You need a lot of cover, a lot of leaf litter. If you go in situ, there's bramble everywhere. There's knocked down palm fronds. There's tons of stuff for them to retreat under if they feel threatened. But if they sometimes feel threatened by you, they feel threatened by other frogs, you know, anything like that. So making them have more hides actually makes them bolder over time because they know there's a place for them to go if there is something happening, like your hand reaching in, or, you know, you coming up with all your friends and being like, yay, frogs. You know, like at my facility, kids like staring at the glass, you know, it's
sticking their nose up against it.
Yeah. It's good for them to not feel threatened. And that's a big misconception that people have. Even if they buy a big tank, they're not doing anything with it. They're used to these bare, minimalistic setups that are fine for a lot of snakes. I mean, if they're used to snakes in tubs, this is a totally foreign, weird concept because it takes away space in their mind. And they're like, well, how's that useful if you're telling me they need more space?
Yeah.
So it's how you use the space that's actually more important. So yes, there are caveats to, oh, you can only keep a pair in a 10-gallon or one 10 gallons per frog. I mean, yeah, that's for new people to not like totally screw up their experience by throwing 3 small Ranitsamea in a 5-gallon tank and calling it a day.
Yeah.
So yeah, the rules are in place for reasons, but the rules are meant to be broken, in my opinion. So yeah.
I like that. And you know what? I probably phrased that question incorrectly. I did not mean for any beginners listening to this, do not put your frogs in a smaller tank.
No, don't.
I did not mean it for it to come out that way. I just there seems to be
fine.
a little bit of hardness on like, oh no, you have more than, you know, the required space. And I kind of wanted to show that again. I've heard you actually give that answer before, the useful space answer, and that's what I wanted to come out. It's the usable surface area and the visual barriers and all of that. So no, that's great. I completely agree. And again, don't put your frogs in small tanks. Stick to the rules.
For your first time, try to do the best you can do, because if you have success the first time, that opens the doors for second, third tries. Okay, now I'm going to get into this frog, or I'm going to go a little smaller this time and just see, you know, I have experience though, so I know what to look for. If there's aggression, I know what to look for. If there's mating, I know what to look for.
Right.
If there's bloat, you know, any weird positions the frog is in, I know what that is. You know, it's all of those things kind of tie into basic husbandry and prevention of, you know, having a bad time with the industry, having a bad time with, your first frogs. Give them the best possible setup the first time. Then you can make adjustments down the line. But why not, like I said, my first tank was a 36, 18, 18. A lot of people want to start with like 12 by 12 by 18s. Did I have that? Yeah, I had those, but that was after I had the big tank. The group of frogs was too big, and I figured that out too fast, but nobody was there telling me, hey, probably don't put 8 in there, to start. Probably just chill at 4. That would be better. So I feel like there needs to be more good information out there.
For sure.
So yeah.
For sure. And yeah, and that was actually one of the main reasons for wanting to do this podcast, putting more of that information out there, right? Like,
yeah,
there definitely is a lack. I agree. And having guests like you on, where hopefully we can bridge that gap. Okay, so most people, if you the things you do find online is the general stuff. You need to feed fruit flies. You need that that well a well set up enclosure. But what about, is it possible to have to keep dart frogs without the whole bioactive and all the live plants and everything?
Yeah,
is it doable?
It's doable. It's not advisable, but it's doable.
Okay.
The quality of life for them, it just depends on what you're getting. That's an ethical kind of anthropomorphic view of that. Unfortunately, there are frogs that don't get sold. I have a lot of singles that are just, I have 4 from the clutch. Somebody buys 3. Nobody really buys 1 frog. So what happens is I have like 20 or so single frogs that are old, that are like a year old or more. And they're chilling in tubs. And the tubs have leaf litter, they have cork rounds, but that's about it. There's no plants, there's no light, besides the ambient light from other tanks.
And they're happy and healthy.
Yeah, is it possible? Absolutely. Would you want to do it? I can't think of a person that would rather do that than have like the nice green lush. The whole point of dart frogs is to see them. Absolutely. I think if you're like I hate to say puppy mill more than once in one podcast, but if you're like a frog mill, then yeah, maybe like, I know a company that does keep them in really bare minimum spag moss 10 gallons. I won't name it, but I'm sure you know who I'm talking about.
Yep.
But, and that's, no, long-term health conditions on that is not good. Spag moss harbors bacteria, and I know they probably change it out, and that's good. But, the long answer to your question is yes, they can be kept non-bio, but I don't know a single person that does that.
Or that would prefer to do it, and the frogs would prefer the bioactive as well.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. There's so many benefits to it. It greatly outweighs the costs. They're not like snakes. Some snakes I feel like do better in sterile. Some lizard species I feel like sometimes do better in sterile.
It is very true. I can tell you that for sure.
Yeah, just because of the environmental requirements for those animals, it's hard to replicate that in a tank. But your tropical, your truly tropical, truly humid loving species like dart frogs, a terrarium is ideal. I think with all the live plants, the LED lighting, keeping it cooler, that's all very easy to do and fun to do. So I would encourage any listeners to definitely go, if you're getting dart frogs, definitely go bio with it.
100%. I 100% agree. Okay, so now that we've kind of touched on the basics, I kind of want to get into some of the stuff that you don't find online.
Sure.
So let's start with like UVB. I've tried to look it up many times. I've had conversation with other dart frog keepers. It seems people are very split on it. What is your opinion on UVB for dart frogs?
There's a decent paper. It's not too old, but there's a decent paper about frogs avoiding UVB. There's an avoidance paper, and that was done with Pamilio. Generally speaking, it's not necessary. So anything I find not necessary, I tend to stay away from. And there's a reason for that. And it's not because I don't want to further the industry in an innovative way. It's because I want to mitigate risks. In a facility like mine, yes, Could I set up a UVB track for one of my rack systems and use borosilicate glass or whatever that allows UVB penetration? Yes, I could. Would I want to risk, though? Not overdoses, because you can't overdose vitamin D3. It's fat soluble. Overdoses would occur from a dietary intake. They wouldn't. The skin actually will stop producing it. But there are other. Obviously, this is radiation we're talking about. So there are other dangers in terms of denaturing DNA, cancers, that kind of stuff with UV radiation. So if it's not necessary, and we have supplements that completely fill the IU requirements of our animals via Repashy, having Calcium Plus available, I have used Calcium Plus since inception of time, and it's only gotten better. Alan has a great company. It's not just, everybody knows it. Repashy is touted time and time again. Necton supplements are good. I think there are other supplements that are also good. Burcon is another great supplement, very difficult to get, but very good, dosed properly. These are things that scientists that specialize in this field have done, and those are things that I do trust from an intrinsic standpoint because I am also a scientist. So I trust their research is solid, and that is hopeful, but it's been a decade now, and I've had pretty good success. So I'd say it's pretty good. So there's no real push for me to go to UVB. Could it benefit? Yeah, it could. There's definitely benefits to it, but most of these frogs, again, are found in leaf litter. There's really low concentrations of UVB hitting the forest floor. Already, most of the canopy filters out almost 50%.
It's very thick over there as well. Yeah,
it's really thick. And yes, there are frogs that bask, absolutely, but they are basking for mere minutes most of the time. Most of the time, these frogs are basking for an average of 2 to 3 minutes and retreating back.
Wow.
They can see. So UV there is a response from their eyes. There's a couple papers on that as well. So they know when there's UV. And they do avoid it after a set amount of time. So for me to set up the complexity of having an extra stretch of screen or a borosilicate type glass and setting up another additional tract of lighting when I already have 2 tracks of, bars going across from my lighting system, it's excessive. I'd have to redo all my tanks. It's not something I'm really interested in doing, nor am I interested in subjecting my frogs as test subjects. Because knowing me, I'll screw it up the first time.
Leave it on too long, or
I'm a trial and error kind of person, and that is just not something I'm willing to do. I'll leave a hobbyist with that, with 20 frogs that can actually take time and really look at is there, track data. Honest to God,
record the data and everything.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, I just don't have time to do it. Do I want to do something like that in the future to further the hobby? Absolutely. But when it's just me and one other person at this time running the website, the store, the shows, the 10,000 square foot facility, all the maintenance of thousands of frogs, and all the hundreds of orders we get a week, I'll pass on that because I'm already staying up all night once a week every week. So I'm dying here.
Once again, appreciate you coming on with all the busy schedule. No,
I didn't mean it like that, but
I know I'm just kidding.
Yeah, absolutely. It is very split because there are noted benefits as well, but most of the frogs again it's a very short time period. So if you could program a low percent UVB bulb to go off for 5 minutes a day, even 10 minutes a day, there might be benefits.
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, and how great are the benefits really? Are they producing? Is it helping them produce better, live longer, have more fecundity? We don't even
getting more
know.
eggs, or what's the measure here?
Benefit really translates to. We know what the benefits are, but we don't know what that translates to long term.
Yeah, nicer colors. It could be a lot of things. Yeah.
Yeah. So with that being said, I don't think we should push it as a hobby because it presents more danger than not because of the heat, giving off heat. A lot of new people, you know, they're like, oh, what heat bulb should I use? And I'm like, don't use a heat bulb. So again, this is if they're like, oh, UVB and heat bulb, and they accidentally do that,
It's done. You're cooking the frog.
death. So again, we're as a newer hobby, and it's not a new hobby, but in the eyes of the public, it's a new hobby. So as experienced hobbyists, we need to be careful what we're telling people because, again, it only takes one loud person to say, I heard on one podcast UVB is good. And then all of a sudden, there's hundreds of people killing the frogs.
100%.
Is that going to happen? Probably not, but I'm not going to be responsible for it.
No, me neither. I hope not.
Yeah, no, you're good. So like right now, I would advise new keepers or even experienced keepers, you don't have to ditch UVB completely, but make sure it's low powered, make sure it's not on for more than 10 minutes a day, and make sure that it's far enough away from the tank to where you're not creating excess heat, or at least you have passive ventilation in your tank. That would be my advice. I wouldn't do it more than that. As long as you're supplementing well every feeding, you have nothing to worry about.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to stop the episode here for now, but tune in next week to hear the rest of the conversation with Alex and continue to learn all about dart frog care and husbandry. You can find Alex at FrogDaddy on all social media, and you can find the links to his accounts in the show notes. I'm Fadi Naddi of Daffy's Reptiles, Daffy's Roundtable for the podcast. Find me on all social media platforms, and we'll see you next time.